you very much for the wonderful introduction. It certainly is an honor to be chosen for this award. I want to thank the AAIE board for your kind consideration in selecting me. But I truly feel a responsibility to represent so many of my colleagues who earn this kind of recognition every day. In speaking with past winners, this was a common theme. This is a collective award representing the work that all of us do each day. We are so lucky to have such amazing peers. So to everyone present and to those who were not able to make it today, this is for you. I consider it extremely important, before going any further, to acknowledge once again my family. First and foremost, my wife, my life partner, Lillian, who can be my harshest critic, and I do count on her for that. And at the same time, my biggest support, and I also count very much on her for that. Lillian and I were first drawn to each other as professional educators in Africa with a mutual respect that has only grown stronger through the years. She remains the love of my life, my closest friend after 42 years of commitment to each other. She has sacrificed much and has served as an inspiration for me and many of the things that I've managed to accomplish. One thing I don't like about this life, this international school life, is we don't get a chance to become familiar with each other's family. Over the years, a few of you have gotten to know Daniel, Joseph, and Jessica, and I wish there were a way for all of you to get to know them now. They too have been and continue to be an inspiration and source of so much learning for me. I've had the good fortune to get to know the children of a few of you, and indeed it has been great. And like many of you, I've been lucky to have many mentors over the years. But I want to introduce to you a mentor from the early years of my career, the one who was responsible for getting me overseas in the first place. Through mutual friends, and the junior high school in Colorado Springs lured me over to Kinshasa for a 2-year contract in 1973. John is an educational visionary who knew how to motivate and then get out of the way, who inspired so many of us at TASOC. One example was in 1974, when we started what I believe to be the first true middle school just after the middle school movement began here in the U.S. Under his leadership. 3 of the teachers in that first middle school were my wife Lillian and our dearly departed friend and colleague Bob Sills and his wife Linda. Now I think John holds a special place in AAIE history because he gave the first international teaching opportunity to 2 future Superintendents of the Year award winners, myself and Bob Sills. Over the years, Bob, Linda, Lillian, and I have tried to convince John and his wife, Kay, to come back overseas, but we couldn't do it. But they remain connected to us and have been participants in the Africa Lunch here at AAIE for several years. Please join me in recognizing one of my early mentors, Dr. John Dinner. Now, we all have to present and speak in front of large groups in our work. And I have seen a few brilliant PowerPoint Prezi-type presentations over the years, some of them at this conference and other places. None of them have been done by me. Therefore, there will be no PowerPoint presentation today. Something that does seem to work for me is to include music in some way in the presentation. This is who I am, and since this is my speech and I can do what I want, there will be music today. And not just any music. I've found that the sound and lyrics of country music can sometimes capture a deep thought in a clear and straightforward manner. So I have asked our friend, the talented performer John Farrell, to help me with this. So please welcome John to the stage. My international school leadership journey has been an amazing ride. With the announcement to leave my current position in June 2018 and take a gap year, I naturally have had cause to reflect on so much. Privileged is the word that keeps coming up for me, as I know it does and continues to do for most of you. There has been no greater privilege than to serve, get to know, work with, and have an impact on thousands of students, colleagues, parents, and community members from all over the world. I've even had some amazing board members. The benefits of having my own kids in first-class schools with first-class faculty are among the many added bonuses. Additionally, there are the amazing experiences we've had outside of our schools, the amazing people we've met along the way. We did a sharing one night at a dinner a few years ago, and the question was, who's the most famous person with whom you've had personal contact in some way? It was amazing to go around the table and hear the names and experiences. Yo-Yo Ma, Richard, or Ricky Dreyfus, as he was known by one of our colleagues. Aung San Suu Kyi, Muhammad Ali, kings, queens, heads of state, prime ministers, sports stars, entertainers. One of us even had the opportunity to sing with Joan Baez. All experiences that we would not have done had we stayed in our home country. I believe in the end that we're all driven by the need to have a positive impact on others. As I think about my move from teacher to counselor to principal to head of school, with some university teaching mixed in, I realized it was all about wanting to have the most impact that I could on the most people. And I think that we are all wired the same way. How can we have maximum effect on others, in our case, on our schools, and still enjoy what we do? But the work is extremely hard, as most of you will attest. Almost immediately as your tenure begins, you lose your identity as an independent individual, cannot just be yourself when you want to be. You can also assume that you are talked about every night at some dinner table in the community, some parking lot, and most certainly at a cocktail reception where the truth serum of alcohol flows freely. The pressure on our personal lives is intense. Having our own kids and sometimes our partner in the same school as us has many wonderful parts to it, but it is also stressful. And simply the demands of the job mean that our families sacrifice a lot in order for us to do our job. As the mayor of a small town, you are never really off duty, and you know more and are responsible for more than you ever would care to know. From being confronted with the safety and security of a school community to the inevitable illness, tragedy, and even death, we are responsible for so much, more than we imagined, having to deal with challenges for which we did not receive that training in Admin 101. Etched in my mind is the memory of being called to a location near school at 3:30 one afternoon a few years ago to identify the body of a much-beloved Swedish PE teacher who went out for an afternoon jog, had a heart attack, and died on the spot. I know many of you have stories in handling crises. I repeat, the work is hard. And there are inherent risks that we all face as the opportunities come along. Failure is waiting around the corner. Our communities are quite fragile, and relationships can change quickly. And nowhere is that more true than when it comes to the work with our boards or owners. This is the group that hires us, who signs our contract, who has the responsibility for the governance, and this relationship remains quite troublesome for far too many of us around the world, even today. Many of you know that I continue to devote quite a bit of time and energy to promoting best practice in board governance. We're making inroads in Hanoi, not only with our board, but with the growing number of board members, heads, and senior administrators who have attended our September workshops over the last 3 years. Attendance last year was over 100, including 75 board members, and we are already planning for next September. This work does give me some hope, and there is excellent work going on and being done by regional associations, consulting others around the world. However, it's going to be a long journey, and in the meantime, the problems persist, and the failures continue to happen. So my presentation today is about an international school leadership topic that's not discussed very much. We're going to talk about failure. I'm talking about trying your best, giving it your best shot, and falling on your face, in this case, with a board. My story, sadly, is one that played out and continues to play out in some form or fashion far too often. On a warm day in the spring of 1995 in Damascus, the board chair entered my office, asked me for my keys and my laptop, and said I was done, and escorted me off campus and locked and changed the locks behind me. The details are not so clear now, and they're actually not so important anymore anyway. I do remember the shock and disbelief I felt, and this was quickly replaced by shame and humiliation as I caught the gaze of some faculty, staff, and students as I left the campus with the board chair. Waves of helplessness followed in the ensuing days, weeks, and months. Was the board out of line and out of control? Absolutely. They had been micromanaging for some time, and which is a huge insult, of course. Chose to interview every teacher over the previous 3 months regarding apparent problems, and simply did not leave me alone to do my job. But eventually, I had to admit, much later, that I too shared in some of the responsibility for what happened. My conflict avoidance approach and other choice of strategy and errors in judgment contributed greatly to my mismanagement of several situations that did contribute to this final outcome. So I was at one of the lowest points in my life. I let my family down, myself down. I had no idea what I was going to do. Needless to say, it was an extremely difficult period for me. What we know about failure is not that the fact that we fail, but what we choose to do about it. Over the next few minutes, I'd like to share 3 major takeaways with you within the theme of international school leadership around this failure. The first major takeaway is what I didn't do. In looking back on my Damascus experience, I had the belief that I had to figure out things for myself. To seek help was not only a sign of weakness, but would only serve to reinforce those who believed that I lacked the experience or skill to do the job, or so I thought. I'm a charming fellow, and I was sure that things were really not that bad. People liked me, and that I was on top of things as they started to go south about 1 year previous. Needless to say, I was foolish, naive, and basically wrong in my approach. The advice I now embrace can be found in a song. John and I want to do a little of the 60s song that was remade in country and western style in the movie Urban Cowboy. The song is Stand By Me. first learning was that you cannot do this job, actually any job for that matter, in isolation. There is a significant strength in being honest with myself regarding a perceived weakness with which I might need help. Reach out to someone. Maintain contact with a few colleagues from this day forward. I was so pleased to hear the many that volunteered to be part of the AAIE Leadership Legacy Program as mentors. And the executive coaching work Kevin Glass and his panel will talk about tomorrow is so vital. Our work is isolating. We can all benefit from some peer coaching, mentoring, and support, keeping a regular dialogue going with people on a regular basis, even when there's not a crisis. This conference is a good example, and there's been tremendous opportunities and encouragement to connect. The ACE Summer Seminar has been an amazing experience each summer over the years. The collegial support I feel when I attend there is unmatched, and I wish it would have been in existence during my days in Syria. I would have benefited greatly. I might add that this goes out also for those not just starting out. I'm convinced that more often than we are aware, we contribute to the problems we face. Go to people who you can trust to be honest with you, and do it before a crisis becomes a crisis, before the point of no return. Now, the second major takeaway began to sink in fairly quickly after the fact. With the help of a colleague, my good friend Jim Maines, who passed away a few years ago, I received an important insight. After listening to my story for about 10 minutes, he stopped me and said, "Chip, you need to do a Kenny Rogers." I said, "A what?" He said, "Kenny Rogers." He said, "Look, you know country music, and the best way I can explain it is to have you think about one of his most famous songs. The song is The Gamble." On a warm summer's eve, on a train by from nowhere, met up with a gambler, both too tired to sleep. So we took turns staring at the window at the darkness. Boredom overtook us, and we began to speak. He said, "Son, I've made a lot out of reading people's faces, knowing what the cards were by the way they held their eyes. So if you don't mind me saying, I can see you're out of faces for a case of the whiskey. I'll give you some advice." So I handed him my bottle. Let down mine I swallowed. Then he bummed a cigarette. He asked me for a light. The night got deathly quiet. Face lost all expression. Said, "Gonna play the game, boy. You got to learn to play it right. You got to know when to hold 'em, know when to fold 'em, know when to walk away, know when to run. You never count your money when you're sitting at the table. There'll be time enough for counting when the deal is done." Okay, this is the interactive part. Join us. You got to know when to hold 'em, know when to fold 'em, know when to walk away, know when to run. You never count your money when you're sitting at the table. There'll be time enough for counting when the deal is done. Jim went on to explain that there are a few select set of circumstances such that no matter how badly you feel you've been treated, no matter how right you think you are, you simply need to leave the situation. There was so much I wanted to say and do in the days after I was escorted off campus. The rumors and untruths were floating around the community, and I was powerless to stop them or to put things right. I wanted the chance to speak out, to exonerate myself, to let the community know the truth. But Jim convinced me that in the end there was nothing to be gained by trying to fix things when you're relatively powerless to do anything about it. He went on to counsel that, in due course, that I'd be able to look back to determine what I could learn from it. And we have heard on so many occasions, often our most painful experiences are the ones we learn the most from, if we get far enough away and get a perspective. So in the end, I became convinced that this was the best option. Take myself out of the situation as soon as feasibly possible and work towards seeking answers to that question, what did I learn from this? Getting fired or non-renewed is unfortunately far more common than we would like. Each year we hear about colleagues who have been fired, let go, non-renewed, often without a reliable explanation of why, and sometimes after receiving a positive performance review a month or two earlier. A couple of years ago, Dick Cheney from Harvard and generative governance fame shared the following quote with me. When the head screws up, the head is fired. When the board screws up, the head is fired. Sometimes the best action is to simply walk away with as much dignity as you can muster. To reference a recent quote from Michelle Obama, when they go low, you go high. But even after walking away from this situation, the feelings of anger, hurt, failure lingered. Now, this may be human nature, but it was really not in my best long-term interest to continue to feel this way. I was determined to push ahead with my life and get on with things, but bitterness and resentment set in without my even being aware of it. I found myself talking about it more and more in terms of what they did to me and how unjustly I was treated and what they did wrong. I was in danger of functioning in reaction to what had happened and thus not in a position to present my best self. Among other things, of course, I tried to read quite a bit, and it was in rereading some things around the time of Nelson Mandela's release from prison, and then, of course, his rise back into power and his reconciliation program, that triggered in me the need to take one more step. And this is my third takeaway. Sometimes it involves forgiveness of ourselves and of others. Sometimes it means accepting the fact that while our work is important, it's not quite as dire sometimes as we make it out to be. One need only to listen to or read the news to put things in perspective. Our challenges pale in the shadow of the life and death issues faced by so many people each day. Letting go allows you to listen clearly once again to your heart with renewed strength and take advantage of the next opportunity. The ultimate goal is reconciliation with yourself and with the people and events that involved. In summary, failure is an inevitable part of what we do, especially if we're trying to do the very best that we can and take those risks that move things forward. The key is, what do we do when we fail? Several of you in this room have been through something like what I went through, and you found a way to learn from it, move on, and be highly successful. I might add that there are too many who have also had this happen who have never really recovered and who dropped out of international school leadership. What a huge loss to our profession. So my experience has taught me three things. Seek guidance. Seek guidance for someone to stand by you. Do what Kenny Rogers when you need to. Be able to walk away when it's clear the situation cannot be changed. And finally, to let it go and try to move on with a clear head and a clear conscience. John and I conclude with a song from the Zac Brown Band, which I feel addresses all of this much better than more words could say. The song is entitled, Let It Go. Cast the sea so long ago was a message from my father. Keep your heart above your head and your eyes wide open, so this world can't find a way to leave you cold. No, you're not the only ship out on the ocean. He saved your strength things that you can't change. Get the one you can't, you gotta let him go. That I ended up not the way I would have had it. You only get one chance in life to leave your mark upon it. So when that pony comes riding by, you better set your sweet ass on it.